Hey, what's up everybody? This is Jose from Florida Hood Blogs. Today's video is about Beverly Hills, Florida. If you're watching on Facebook, please follow me on YouTube because I'm not always going to be able to share these videos. I drove through Beverly Hills and I don't know, I really need your opinion. You the viewer, I want your opinion. I want you to look at this video and I want you to give me your opinion. Because here's the situation with this little town. This little town is located in Citrus County, about 80 miles north of Tampa, southwest of Ocala, so like between Spring Hill and Ocala in the middle somewhere. This little town has a really bad reputation. I talked to somebody on Facebook and they told me when they lived there, they heard gunshots twice a week. Every week they'd hear gunshots. Everybody in this county thinks that this little Beverly Hills community is absolutely horrendous. However, when I drive through the community, I think it looks like a really nice place. I like the trees, I like the houses, I like that the houses are spread out, and I just don't see it. I don't see this place being that horrible hood that all the local people were warning me about. I'm talking about, like, I see palm trees, I see the grasses are cut. Yeah, there's a few properties that are abandoned here and there. You'll see a few properties that are in disrepair. But for the most part, people's lawns are cut. You know, they park their cars on the driveway, not on the grass. I don't see, and it's got these really nice rolling hills. So I don't really see why the local people that I spoke to in Citrus County think that this is a hood. I think it's because they don't really have a real hood around to be able to compare it to, although they kind of do because there are some places in the area that are hood. I don't get it. So please, I want your opinion. If you're watching this video, this neighborhood, does it look bad to you? Because it doesn't look bad to me. It looks like a really nice place to me. The houses here are so affordable, and even if you go on the internet, when you look up this town, it's been on list of like the top 10 worst places to live in Florida. It has this horribly bad reputation. However, everybody that I met there was friendly. I've driven through this neighborhood in the daytime. I've driven through this neighborhood at night. I've been there in the weekends. And to me, it just seems like a working class neighborhood. So I don't know why the neighborhood has that fame. I know there's places like Compton, California, where it looks really nice, but then nights and weekends, it just gets off of scales when the kids get out of school and all that happens, you know? But anyways, I'm not the one saying this place is ghetto. I'm not the one saying this place is bad. That's the people that I spoke to on the ground, and that's most of the people on the internet who talk about this town just really give it a negative tone. I personally like it. I don't mind the area. I think it's really nice, rolling hills. Some of the streets are getting paved. The properties are extremely affordable. I mean, like, on a scale you're not going to see anywhere in Florida. It's really, really affordable here. And in the last year, I've noticed that properties have gone up. Like, there are houses for $45,000 and $50,000. Now most listings are up to $130,000. So this real estate here went from like $40,000 and $50,000 to like $80,000 or $90,000 to $100,000 like overnight. So there was a big jump. But then again, there was a jump in real estate in most areas of Florida, but it was most pronounced in this little area. It's not that people are going crazy to move in. It's just that the general volume of houses that were empty from the crash 2008, you know, like those houses all got filled in. So it kind of went like in a north trend, starting like in Spring Hill, and it worked its way up to these areas now. So where there's not many houses left over from the crash. Pretty much those extra houses that were empty have all been filled in the entire state. Even areas like, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Interlachen, and what's the one that's Keystone Heights that's right next to it. There's been a lot of Puerto Ricans moving into Florida after the hurricane, and I think they're really economically mobile. Most of them know English, and a lot of them have a decent amount of money. So they've been filling up areas like Marion Oaks outside of Orlando, Bellevue south of Orlando, definitely Keystone Heights up in near Hawthorne. I mean, the whole entire section of the state that's central, Orlando, all that has just been filled in with people from Puerto Rico who left after the hurricane, and just massive amounts of people from Puerto Rico moving into Central Florida, filling in those gaps. So now the real estate areas that had a lot of vacancy have completely filled in. So at this point, I think any further growth in the state of Florida is really going to have to consist of new development. So I think even though nationally there's like a trend, like a leveling out of prices, I think if population growth continues in Florida, it's definitely going to require new development. I had another viewer ask me on the channel recently about relations between Hispanics in the state of Florida. Pretty much like, do Cubans get along with Puerto Ricans and all that? Let me just break this down. I have cousins that are married to Colombians. I have cousins that are married to Puerto Ricans. So basically, Cubans and Puerto Ricans mix very well. Now, Puerto Ricans are mostly in the Orlando and Tampa area, and Cubans are in Tampa and Miami area. So Tampa is really and Orlando are really the mixing pots, even though there's a lot of Puerto Ricans in Miami too. But Cubans and Puerto Ricans are very united. Our culture is similar. Just a lot. There's so much in common. And like I said, I have at least two or maybe three cousins that are married into Puerto Ricans and Colombians as well. So I think two of my cousins are married or have had kids with Colombians. So it's a real mix down here of the Hispanic culture. The only race or nationality, actually is the correct term, the only nationality between Latinos that really sticks to their own are Guatemalans. They really don't mess with other people. They only kind of mess with Mexican people in a little degree. Guatemalans are the most, they're the newest immigrant group in the state of Florida. As far as migration goes, they're the most recent, other than Venezuelans, who have just had trouble with Cubans. A lot of Venezuelans, they resent that the Cuban political system is what destroyed their country's economy. So for some reason, Venezuelans never really liked Cubans, but in the most part, Cubans get along better with Colombians. Venezuelans don't get along with Colombians either. Venezuelans and Colombians, for the most part, tend to have some friction between each other, their neighbors. Dominicans and Haitians tend to have a lot of contingencies with each other. The issue with Dominicans and Haitians is that they share an island. So one side of the island is black, Haiti, and the other side of the island, Dominican Republic, is black too, but then they think they're white. And that's kind of funny because I have a friend, he's Dominican, and he thinks he's white. I'm like, dude, you look black, you're black. And he's like, no, I'm white. So Dominicans are, for the most part, whiter than Haitians, but they're still African. They're very much African, but their culture kind of pushes away from that. So there's a problem internally between Dominicans and Haitians, and they have some issues between each other, Colombians and Venezuelans. But overall, the only race that really doesn't stick to anybody else in Florida is the Guatemalans, and they're new here. They just arrived. There's a lot of, I think it's something like 250,000 Guatemalans came into the United States like in the last year. That's a lot of people coming over here from Guatemala. You know, with Donald Trump, there was a migration out of the United States. A lot of Mexicans and illegals left voluntarily because Obama was more liberal towards them. Not that he didn't deport a lot of people. This channel's not about politics, by the way. I'm not getting into politics, but I'm just saying demographically, a lot of Mexicans left with Trump, and I thought that was going to affect the housing because, you know, there's entire neighborhoods in Florida that are Mexican, and a lot of them are illegal. Not all of them, a lot of them. And what happened was, immediately, as soon as the Mexicans left, the ones who had money, they're like, you know what, we're going to go back to our country. I had a lot of good friends and business partners here in South Florida that left back to Mexico because they didn't want to get deported. They said, you know, if we're not wanted here, we're just going to leave. As soon as they left, immediately the people from Guatemala came in and filled in the spot. Immediately, there's also people from Honduras and Salvador that came with them. I think what they're really trying to flee, and I think it's kind of slowed down now a little bit, but what they were really trying to flee, and they were very young men. I think a lot of them weren't even 18 years old. There was gang violence in their country, so they're leaving because when you're a certain age, the gangs try to recruit you by force. So a lot of them left the country. We're talking a year and a half, 2 years ago. A lot of them came over here, and I don't know if they've kind of integrated into society better, but definitely the new immigrants from Guatemala, they will not eat Cuban food. I was just talking to a lady who owns a Cuban restaurant in Fort Myers, and the people from Guatemala, they had to open up a taco stand next to the business just to accommodate them because they won't even try other Latin American foods. They're very, they don't mix very well with other people. And I think they're really only hurting themselves because their kids are going into schools that are very, very diversified. They're in neighborhoods that are diversified. So now their kids are growing up hanging out with black kids, hanging out with Haitian kids, hanging out with other Spanish kids. But the older people are very, very, like, they really keep to themselves. I think that's like the only immigrant group in Florida that really just doesn't mix with anybody else. Okay, so there's also a lot of Haitians in Florida. I think the figure is something like 500,000. Most Haitians are in Miami, West Palm Beach, Fort Myers, Lehigh Acres. There are some in Ocala, and there's a lot in Orlando. Haitians get along very well with Cubans because there's so much in common between Cubans and Haitians as far as food and the fact that there's 500,000 Haitians in Cuba. So Haitians know that Cubans are accepting to them because there's so many Haitians that came to Cuba, and there's a really good relationship between the two countries. Culturally, there's a lot in common, so Haitians and Cubans get along very well. I think it's almost like a rule that Cubans, Mexicans, and Haitians, they kind of tend to go into the same communities together, and they kind of like, they mix pretty well. Haitians are they're to themselves, but they also mix. They used to not get along with Jamaicans, but I think today all the Caribbean people in Florida are pretty. Everybody gets along well. I don't think there's like, I don't know what you were trying to ask with that question, like if there's tensions between them. I think for the most part, like Puerto Ricans have taken up Orlando, Cubans have taken up South Florida, and everybody kind of has their own niche. So economically, people are not bumping heads. Everybody kind of has their own niche, like within the South Florida and Central Florida community. Once you get into North Florida, that's totally different there. There's some Cubans living in Gainesville. There are some Puerto Ricans around Keystone Heights and around Jacksonville. And then that's about it. Jasper, Florida has some Cuban population. And pretty much when you get like into Tallahassee, North Florida, the only groups that you're going to find are some people from Guatemala that are working in rural places doing agriculture. But most of the Hispanic population is kind of like towards the south side and central side of the state. All right, so here's a fun fact for you. Hispanic and Latino. What's the difference between Hispanic and Latino? Hispanic is somebody that has like a Spaniard descent. So people in Spain are Hispanic. However, Latino is different. People in Spain are not Latinos. However, Haitians are considered Latinos, but they're not Hispanic. So Spaniards are Hispanics, but they're not Latinos, and Haitians are Latinos, but they're not Hispanic. So that's the difference between Hispanic and Latino. I love everything. I love Haitian food. They have this thing called griot, which is like fried pork chunks, and they put it in a sauce. It's amazing. I like Colombian food. They have this thing called bandeja paisa, which is a platter that has everything from their country. I like Cuban food. Obviously, I'm Cuban. I love it. I love Puerto Rican food. If you like Puerto Rican food, you have to try what they call mofongo, which is amazing. I think Dominicans also make that. I went to a Dominican restaurant in Fort Lauderdale that had it, and it was amazing. So all these countries, Cuban, Puerto Rican, all these countries have amazing food. I'm not too fond of the Guatemalan food. I've tried it, and I don't like it. It's just personal taste. I prefer Mexican more. And there's a lot of good Mexican food in Florida. But that's what's up. I think for the most part, everybody here gets along very well. So that's the answer to your question. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and let me know what you think about Beverly Hills. I think it's a nice place.